Police arrested Johnson earlier this month in connection with an alleged domestic assault.
Dior Johnson was accused of assaulting a woman. Several charges were dropped today. Johnson is still facing a felony charge of strangulation.
Dior Johnson, born January 28, 2004. Today's feature is another down the line of high school players coming up in the boom of YouTube high school basketball fame, leading to unreal ratings and almost unattainable expectations. The Noah Farrakhan's, Mikey Williams, and Dior Johnsons of the world that at some point were or are touted as can't-miss prospects. Their fame and notoriety has reached levels some would say much bigger than their game could back up on the court. Noah Farrakhan of the class of 2020 was one of the most popular, and going off his YouTube highlights and social media presence, online that is, despite him being just a 3-star recruit, ranked 304th in his class and not even top 10 at his position. Don't get me wrong, because I like what Noah Farrakhan has developed into at his second Division I school, Eastern Michigan. Just wish he had room in the form of his perception not being misled to expect greatness sooner from him. Mikey Williams is another example of a high school talent overhyped, yes, overhyped, seeing as his perception is he's the best high school talent since LeBron James and most marketable recruit in the era of kids owning and able to profit from the use of their name, image, and likeness, also known as NIL. Mikey already has a deal with Puma, making him the first high school athlete to sign an endorsement deal, even though he isn't ranked in the top 20 in his class, nor best at his position and a 4-star recruit. Dior Johnson was Mikey Williams just a year earlier and a bit outside the window he could profit off the court like Mikey has. But as far as hype and name overshadowing their game, they've almost experienced the same beginnings. My point is, sometimes how good a player actually is gets lost in the shuffle of how cool he's perceived to be online, or how his charisma and overexposure by popular YouTube channels have created a facade about him greater than his potential on the court. Johnson was and probably is a nice player that in actuality has a talent level that was always going to need a few years in college in my eyes to really develop, as to me he never had one talent that stood out and was clearly more advanced than something I've seen before. One of the best high school point guards I've ever seen was Derrick Rose. Clearly Johnson is nowhere near the high school talent Rose was. Rose would have deserved the attention Mikey Williams or Dior Johnson gets. Regardless how I feel about his game, Dior faces more pressing issues impeding his journey to the NBA. He was recently arrested and faces trial on charges of strangulation, a felony, simple assault, a misdemeanor, accused of assaulting his girlfriend because she got his phone wet. He was also suspended indefinitely from his college program he only arrived at weeks prior, in a shocking commitment even the head coach says just fell into their laps. He hasn't played a game in college and will have to wait until at least mid-December if he's acquitted of charges to even take the floor with his team. Dior Johnson has become his own distraction, and it might cost him his future as well. What happened? Let's talk about it. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth. Let's get it, man.
Y'all ready to keep this thing moving?
Dior Johnson is listed at 6'3" and is a point guard from Kingston, New York that has been enrolled in 10 different high schools throughout his high school career. His cool name and flashy game as a youngster fit the mold of what kids younger than him gravitate to online and pushed in the form of views and likes to the point his name blew up in 2017. His highlights were fair, although I've always seen him as a normal prospect, nothing special. Nevertheless, he was everywhere on YouTube, with likes of Kevin Durant and LeBron James showing up to his games, assisting in the overhype. The talent never matched, nor did the consistency in where he played, often switching schools mid-year like he's preparing for an overseas lifestyle. That, and he committed and decommitted so often that it surprised head coach Jeff Capel. From Syracuse to Oregon to Pittsburgh, and now for the moment without a team. Stunt number 1, being misled. What's clear about the 18-year-old prospect, and just sad in general, is that he's clearly being misled, and it, at the very least, has taught him, or should I say, hasn't taught him the value of committing, of being consistent, and how paramount that is in your development and how you're perceived in the public eye. To remember that youth is fleeting, and soon there'll be a new you, and you'll have to move on with whatever you built for yourself. Dior Johnson hasn't really built in high school. If he didn't like a place for whatever reason, he just left there and started a new journey somewhere else. Someone ruffled his or his handler's feathers, he's off to somewhere else to stake his flag for however long or short. 10 high schools in 4 years means the people handling this kid at the time and making adult decisions for him are confused as to what would be best for Dior the player, not Dior the brand. Transferring so often ultimately hurt his high school rankings and status as a familiar image of him dominating his area or allowing for things like McDonald's All-Americans and other status enhancers to do their job in promoting the player. He did participate in the Jordan Brand Classic in 2022, where he had 7 points and 1 assist in 17 minutes. From high school in New York in 2017 to 7 high schools in 6 states after, every departure without reason or explanation, rumors of character issues arose as he'd ignore calls from coaches like Oak Hill Academy, leading to decommitments far too many. It showed he wasn't handled particularly right or wasn't taught a good lesson in reality, which may be why his behavior recently, thinking he could do things that he's alleged to have done to a female, is okay because he's Dior Johnson. He's always been allowed to do and move as he please, and should Pitt force his hand, he'll leave them too. That kind of pedigree does not sit well with professional teams and clearly says he isn't a leader or was misled, equally damaging. Stunt number 2, allegations. According to the postgazette.com, in October of 2022, Dior Johnson had a criminal complaint against him by a female alleging Johnson got angry at her for getting his phone wet, to which he hit her multiple times, attempted to strangle her, and held her from leaving the building on her own free will. At first, many thought this story couldn't be true and that names must have been mixed up, but they weren't. The Dior Johnson on the file complaint was in fact Pitt's new arrival who just touched campus not long before, even though most his teammates came early in the summer to prepare for the season. Those September 5th and 6th allegations led to his eventual arrest and being held for trial October 20th, where aggravated assault, unlawful restraint, and false imprisonment charges were dismissed. A felony charge for strangulation was not, and he will stand formal arraignment December 7th, a month into the Pitt Panthers season. The alleged victim says this isn't the first time the two has fought and that Johnson has done much worse, but she didn't want to ruin his career by going public, to which she claims to have video and pictures to back up her story. Even if not charged and able to move on from this, it distracts his college career much like high school was, with him constantly transferring and decommitting. His play will have to be that much better, and still character issues since high school now come into question for NBA teams. Is he good enough to erase those? We'll see. Stunt number 3, a long road ahead. I could say no, in my opinion, Dior Johnson isn't good enough to make the NBA after all he's been through, but I'll just say he has a long road of development ahead before then. To me, like mentioned, he doesn't have a standout talent. He's not an elite athlete running or jumping, not elite size, as I don't think he's 6'3". Even then, that's average in the NBA now, and he's really slender. He doesn't shoot lights out or even confidently. He was a gifted passer as a youth, but not like Chris Paul or something, just decent. leadership skills completely went down the drain because he's never been anywhere long enough to establish or develop that. Now he's missing valuable time as a college athlete he could have been using to develop on the floor. He's talented, I get that, but talent only doesn't get you to the league, nor does it keep you there. All in all, Dior Johnson has the fight of his life December 7th, then as a college athlete to prove it was all worth it. Should he make the NBA, I would have a ton of respect for him, seeing all he went through, but he's made that dream harder to realize because of everything mentioned above. Salute, much respect, it certainly is not over, but for these reasons, his growth is being stunted. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth, and I'm out.